What if I told you that the very thing you're doing to hold on to love is actually driving it away? Sounds counterintuitive, right? But that's exactly what anxious attachment does. It tricks you into thinking that overgiving, overthinking, and overcompensating will keep your relationships intact. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Instead, it creates a cycle of fear, insecurity, and disconnection that leaves you feeling more alone than ever. And the worst part, most people don't even realize they're stuck in this pattern. Here's the truth. Anxious attachment isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to address it. Maybe you've noticed yourself constantly seeking reassurance, avoiding conflict, or staying in relationships that don't serve you. Or perhaps you've felt the sting of rejection and wondered, why does this keep happening to me? The good news is, you're not broken, and there's a way out. By understanding the hidden ways, anxious attachment sabotages love. You can finally break free from the cycle and start building the healthy, fulfilling relationships you deserve. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the 5 key ways anxious attachment is holding you back. And, more importantly, how to stop it in its tracks. Whether you're tired of attracting emotionally unavailable partners, struggling to set boundaries, or just looking for answers, this is your chance to take control of your love life. So, are you ready to uncover the truth and start rewriting your story? Let's get started. Anxious attachment is like carrying an invisible weight in every relationship you've ever had. It's that constant fear of being too much or not enough, of loving too deeply and still feeling like you're never truly seen. Imagine always walking on eggshells, terrified that one wrong move could push someone away. That's the reality for many people who struggle with this attachment style. And the worst part? Most don't even realize how deeply it's rooted in their past. It's not just about the present. It's about the patterns you've been unknowingly following since childhood. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, explains how the bonds we form with our caregivers shape the way we connect with others later in life. Think of your childhood as the blueprint for your emotional world. If your caregivers were inconsistent, sometimes attentive, sometimes distant, it's no surprise that you grew up craving reassurance and fearing abandonment. It's not about blaming them. It's about understanding how those early experiences taught you to navigate relationships. After all, how can you trust love when it felt unreliable from the start? Take a moment to reflect. Have you ever found yourself bending over backward to keep someone close, even when it hurt? That's the anxious attachment at play. It convinces you that your worth is tied to how much you give, how much you sacrifice. But here's the kicker. The more you chase connection, the more it seems to slip through your fingers. It's a vicious cycle, one that leaves you feeling drained, unfulfilled, and questioning your self-worth. The good news, recognizing this pattern is the first step toward breaking free. But let's not stop there. To truly understand anxious attachment, we need to dig deeper into how it sabotages your relationships. Why do you keep attracting emotionally unavailable partners? Why does the fear of abandonment push you to overcompensate? And most importantly, how can you start rewriting this story? Let's dive into the impact this attachment style has on your love life and uncover the hidden ways it's holding you back. Anxious attachment doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It actively shapes the way you approach love and connection. At its core is the fear of abandonment, a deep-rooted belief that you're always one step away from being left behind. This fear drives behaviors that ironically push people further away. You might find yourself overanalyzing every text, every pause in conversation, convinced it's a sign they're pulling away. It's exhausting, isn't it? But it feels like the only way to protect yourself from the heartbreak you're so desperately trying to avoid. This attachment style also has a way of attracting emotionally unavailable partners. Why? Because it feels familiar. If you grew up with caregivers who were inconsistent, sometimes loving, sometimes distant, you might unknowingly seek out relationships that mirror that dynamic. It's not that you want to be neglected, but your brain is wired to chase what it knows, even if it's unhealthy. The result, you end up in a cycle of giving and giving, hoping that if you just try harder, they'll finally meet your emotional needs. Spoiler alert, they rarely do. The saddest part is how this cycle leads to self-abandonment. You start to prioritize their feelings over your own, convincing yourself that their happiness is more important than yours. You ignore your needs, suppress your emotions, and lose touch with your authentic self. all in the name of keeping the relationship intact. But here's the truth: no relationship is worth losing yourself over. The more you give up pieces of who you are, the more disconnected you feel, not just from them, but from yourself. And yet, despite the pain, it's hard to break free. You might stay in relationships that leave you feeling unfulfilled, clinging to the hope that things will change. But why does this happen? Why do we hold on so tightly, even when we know it's not good for us? The answer lies in the behaviors anxious attachment creates, behaviors that sabotage connection even as you fight to keep it. Let's explore those next. Anxious attachment has a sneaky way of making you your own worst enemy in relationships. One of the most common behaviors, people-pleasing. You bend over backward to meet your partner's needs, often at the expense of your own. You might think, if I just make them happy, they'll never leave. But here's the catch: when you constantly prioritize someone else's happiness, you lose touch with your authentic self. Over time, this lack of boundaries creates resentment. Not just toward them, but toward yourself for allowing it to happen. And let's be honest, how can someone truly love you if you're not showing them who you really are? Then there's clinginess, that overwhelming need for constant reassurance. It's like you're always on high alert, scanning for any sign that the relationship might be slipping away. A delayed text? Panic. A change in tone. Overthinking kicks into high gear. The problem is, this hypervigilance doesn't create connection. It erodes it. Imagine holding on to someone so tightly that they feel suffocated. That's what clinginess does. It's not about love, it's about fear. And fear-based behaviors rarely lead to the emotional intimacy you crave. Another major behavior is conflict avoidance. You might avoid difficult conversations because you're terrified of rocking the boat. You tell yourself, it's not worth the fight, but deep down, you're just scared of what might happen if you speak your truth. The irony: avoiding conflict doesn't prevent disconnection, it causes it. Without honest communication, trust and emotional safety can't exist. And when you bottle up your feelings, they eventually explode in ways that hurt both you and your partner. Finally, there's the tendency to stay in toxic relationships far longer than you should. The fear of being alone keeps you tethered to situations that drain you emotionally. You convince yourself that any relationship is better than no relationship, even if it leaves you feeling neglected and unfulfilled. But here's the thing: holding on to the wrong person only delays finding the right one. So why do we cling to these behaviors, even when they hurt us? The answer lies in understanding the deeper patterns driving them. Let's take a closer look at how self-reflection can help break this cycle. Breaking free from the grip of anxious attachment starts with one powerful tool: self-reflection. It's not always easy to look inward, but understanding the patterns that drive your behaviors is the first step toward change. Think about it. How often do you stop to ask yourself, why do I act this way in relationships? Maybe you've noticed a tendency to overthink or a fear of being alone. But have you ever traced those feelings back to their roots? Often, they're tied to unresolved childhood trauma, moments when your emotional needs weren't met, leaving you with a lingering sense of neglect or insecurity. Here's the thing: your past doesn't define you, but it does shape you. If you grew up in an environment where love felt inconsistent, sometimes present, sometimes withheld, it's no wonder you developed coping mechanisms to protect yourself. Maybe you became hypervigilant, always scanning for signs of rejection. Or perhaps you learned to suppress your feelings, believing they weren't important. These patterns might have helped you survive as a child, but as an adult, they can sabotage your relationships. Recognizing this isn't about blaming your past, it's about reclaiming your future. Self-awareness also means taking a hard look at your choices. Why do you keep attracting avoidant partners? Why do you stay in relationships that don't fulfill you? It's not about beating yourself up. It's about understanding the deeper fears driving those decisions. For example, if you've ever stayed with someone who made you feel small, ask yourself, was it because their neglect felt familiar? Did you mistake their emotional unavailability for a challenge to win their love? These are tough questions, but answering them can be incredibly freeing. The beauty of self-reflection is that it opens the door to healing. Once you identify the patterns holding you back, you can start rewriting your story. But awareness alone isn't enough. You need actionable steps to move forward. How do you set boundaries when you've never had them? How do you rebuild your self-worth after years of self-abandonment? The answers lie in learning new strategies to approach love and connection. Building emotional safety is another game changer. This starts with trusting yourself and learning to communicate your feelings openly. Vulnerability can feel terrifying, but it's the foundation of true intimacy. Instead of bottling up your emotions, try sharing them in a calm, honest way. For instance, instead of saying, "You never care about me," reframe it as, "When you don't respond to my texts, I feel overlooked, and I'd love more communication." It's not about blaming, it's about inviting understanding. Emotional safety isn't just about trusting others, it's about trusting yourself to handle whatever comes your way. Rebuilding your self-worth is equally crucial. For too long, you've probably tied your value to how much you give in relationships. But your worth isn't something others get to decide, it's something you define. Start by reconnecting with the things that bring you joy outside of a relationship. Maybe it's picking up an old hobby, spending time with friends, or simply taking a moment to reflect on your strengths. When you build a life that feels fulfilling on its own, you stop relying on others to fill the gaps. And that's when real, healthy love becomes possible. Finally, take personal accountability for your healing. It's easy to point fingers at past partners or circumstances, but true growth comes from looking inward. Ask yourself, what patterns am I repeating? How can I show up differently next time? This isn't about blaming yourself, it's about empowering yourself. Healing is a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. But with each step, you'll find yourself moving closer to the love and connection you've always deserved. And speaking of connection, let's talk about how to bring all of this together in a way that transforms your relationships. At the heart of it all, overcoming anxious attachment is about reconnecting with your inner world, your feelings, your needs, and your worth. It's about learning to trust yourself again and realizing that you don't have to chase love to deserve it. Everyone has fears and insecurities, but those don't have to define your relationships. Imagine a version of yourself that feels confident setting boundaries, expressing emotions, and walking away from what doesn't serve you. That version of you is closer than you think. It's just waiting for you to take the first step. The beauty of this journey is that it's not about perfection, it's about progress. You'll have moments where old habits creep in, overthinking, people-pleasing, or avoiding conflict. That's okay. The goal isn't to never feel anxious again, it's to recognize those feelings and respond to them in healthier ways. For example, when you feel the urge to seek constant reassurance, pause and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of right now? That small moment of self-reflection can be the difference between repeating old patterns and creating new ones. And here's the thing, healing doesn't mean you'll never face challenges in relationships. It means you'll face them differently. You'll approach love with a sense of curiosity instead of fear, with confidence instead of desperation. You'll stop seeing vulnerability as a weakness and start embracing it as a strength. Because the truth is, the relationships that thrive are the ones built on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. And those qualities start with how you treat yourself. So, what's next? How do you take everything you've learned and apply it to your life? The answers lie in action. Small, intentional steps that lead to big changes. Whether it's setting a boundary, journaling through your fears, or simply reminding yourself that you're enough, every step matters. And if you're ready to dive deeper, let's explore how to bring all of these lessons together to create the love and connection you've been searching for. If this video resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And before you go, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This way, you'll never miss another opportunity to learn, grow, and take control of your emotional health. Your journey to healthier, more fulfilling relationships starts here. Let's keep going together.